The envelope was already addressed when she handed it to me. Divorce papers, printed on expensive cream-colored paper, the kind you don't buy at an office supply store. She'd planned this, paid for a lawyer, had everything ready before the conversation started. We were sitting in our tiny apartment, the same one-bedroom we'd shared for 4 years while she finished college. The same apartment where I'd come home exhausted from my second job to find her studying at our kitchen table, where I'd made her coffee at midnight during finals week, where we'd talked about the future like it included both of us. She wore a new dress I'd never seen before. Her hair was different, styled professionally. She looked like someone I was meeting for the first time, polished and distant, a stranger wearing my wife's face. "I need you to understand, this isn't about you," she said, her voice calm, rehearsed. "It's about me. I've grown. College changed me. I want different things now. We're at different places in our lives. Different places." She'd graduated summa cum laude 2 days ago. I'd been there, in the audience, clapping until my hands hurt. Proud of her, proud of us, thinking this was the beginning of our real life together. I'd already started looking at better apartments, places we could afford once she started her career, planning surprises to celebrate her achievement. I hadn't known she was celebrating by planning to leave. I looked at the papers. Her signature was already there, neat and final. A space waited for mine. My hands didn't shake when I picked up the pen. I remember that clearly. I thought they would, but they didn't. I signed my name slowly, carefully, like I was signing a permission slip for something ordinary. When I looked up, she seemed almost disappointed, like she'd expected more from me. A fight, tears, begging, something she could point to later as proof she'd made the right choice. I gave her nothing but my signature. Then I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and walked out of the apartment I'd paid for. I never went back. 4 years earlier, I'd met Rebecca at a community college computer lab. She was frustrated with a software program, quietly cursing at her screen, her dark hair falling forward as she hunched over the keyboard. I'd just finished my shift at the campus help desk and stopped to assist. 15 minutes of troubleshooting turned into 2 hours of conversation. She was 23, working toward an engineering degree, brilliant and ambitious, funny in unexpected ways. I was 26, working full-time at a tech support call center, taking night classes when I could afford them, trying to build something from nothing. We started dating a week later. Within 3 months, I was completely in love. Within 6 months, we moved in together to save money. Her parents had died in an accident when she was 19, leaving her with some life insurance money that covered part of her tuition, but not enough. She worked part-time at a bookstore, but it wasn't sufficient. The stress was breaking her. She'd cry over textbooks she couldn't afford, panic about whether she'd have to drop out. I made a decision then that seemed obvious and right. I'd help her finish. I picked up a second job doing weekend IT work for small businesses. 60, 70 hours a week sometimes. I was young and strong, and believed completely that investing in her future was investing in ours. She'd finish school, get a good job, and then maybe I could go back to school, or we'd start a business together, or just live a comfortable life. It was a plan, a partnership, or so I thought. Looking back now, I can see things I ignored. The way her friends from college looked at me like I was a temporary arrangement. The way she gradually stopped introducing me as her husband and started saying, "This is Daniel," with no explanation. The way she'd come home from study groups smelling like cologne I didn't wear. But I was too busy working to pay attention, too tired to question, too trusting to suspect. She graduated with honors, beautiful in her cap and gown, and I stood in the back of the auditorium thinking we'd made it through the hard part. 2 days later, she handed me divorce papers and the hard part actually began. After I walked out of the apartment, I stayed at my friend Marcus's place for 2 weeks, sleeping on his couch, going to work in the same clothes, functioning on autopilot. Marcus had warned me once, carefully, that Rebecca seemed to be changing in ways that didn't include me. I'd gotten defensive, told him he didn't understand our relationship. Now his couch springs dug into my back every night while I stared at his ceiling, replaying every moment, looking for where I'd failed. The divorce was quick. We had almost nothing to divide. The apartment lease was in her name. The car was mine. Our bank account had $200, which she kept. No arguments, no mediation necessary. 6 weeks after I signed those papers, I was officially single. The strangest part was the silence. For 4 years, my entire life had oriented around Rebecca's schedule, her needs, her goals. Now there was just empty time, stretching out like a road with no destination. I felt untethered, purposeless. I'd defined myself as her husband, her supporter, her partner in building a future. Without that identity, who was I? A 30-year-old man with an unfinished degree, 2 exhausting jobs I'd only taken to support someone else's dream, and no plan for my own life. I kept working both jobs for a while. Muscle memory. Until one night I was driving home from the IT gig at midnight and realized I didn't have to anymore. There was no tuition to pay. No one depending on me. No reason to destroy myself with overwork. So I quit the second job. The extra time felt foreign and uncomfortable. I didn't know what to do with it. I'd forgotten how to have hobbies, interests, goals of my own. For the first month, I just came home from work, ate whatever was easiest, and went to sleep. But slowly, something started to shift. Maybe it was anger finally arriving. Maybe it was just survival instinct. But I began to ask myself a question I'd been avoiding. What did I actually want for my life? Not what Rebecca wanted. Not what I thought I should want. What did I want? The answer, when it came, was simple and devastating. I wanted to matter. I wanted to build something that was mine. I wanted to become someone I could respect. 3 months after the divorce, I found out the real reason Rebecca left. I ran into one of her college friends at a grocery store, a woman named Jen, who'd always been decent to me. She looked uncomfortable when she saw me, but I asked directly, "There's someone else, isn't there?" She hesitated, then nodded. "His name is Tyler. He's a senior associate at an investment firm. They met at a networking event her last semester." "I'm sorry, Daniel. Most of us thought it was wrong the way she handled it." Tyler, investment firm, of course. I wasn't angry the way you'd expect. I was almost relieved. It meant the problem wasn't me failing her. It was her choosing someone who looked better on paper, someone who fit the new life she wanted. She'd traded up, or thought she had. That night, I allowed myself to feel everything I'd been suppressing. The betrayal, the years I'd given, the future I'd believed in that was never real. I cried, probably for the first time since my father died, hard and ugly. The kind of crying that leaves you exhausted and empty. When I was done, I felt different, lighter, like I'd been carrying her ghost around and finally set it down. I made a list that night, not a revenge list, a life list. Things I wanted to accomplish for myself, finish my degree, start saving money, get in shape, learn to cook properly, build a skill set that could lead somewhere. Stop living like I was waiting for my real life to begin. That list went on my bathroom mirror. Every morning I looked at it. Some days the goals felt impossible. Some days I was too tired or depressed to care. But I kept the list there, and gradually I started checking things off. I enrolled in online courses to finish my bachelor's degree. I started going to the gym at 5 in the morning before work, the only time I had. I watched cooking videos and taught myself to make real meals instead of eating gas station food. Small changes. Incremental progress. Nothing dramatic or movie-like, but every small thing I did for myself felt like taking back territory I'd lost. I was building a foundation, alone, for a life that belonged only to me. And somewhere in the process, I stopped thinking about Rebecca every day, then every week, then hardly at all. She became history, someone I used to know, a chapter that was closed. By the end of the first year, my life looked completely different. I'd finished my bachelor's degree in information systems, taking classes online while working full-time. I'd lost 30 pounds and gained muscle definition I didn't know I could have. I'd moved to a small but decent apartment that was mine alone, furnished with things I chose, organized the way I liked. I'd started reading again, something I'd abandoned during the years of exhaustion. Philosophy, history, business books, anything that made me think and grow. But the biggest change was internal. I'd spent 4 years making myself smaller to support Rebecca's expansion. Now I was learning to take up space again, to have opinions, to pursue interests without checking if they aligned with someone else's needs. I discovered I actually liked being alone. Not in a sad, isolated way, but in a content, self-sufficient way. I could cook a good meal and eat it in silence without feeling lonely. I could spend a Saturday hiking by myself and come home energized rather than desperate for company. I'd been so afraid of loneliness after the divorce, but what I found instead was independence, and it suited me. Work-wise, I'd started to distinguish myself. Without the distraction of a failing marriage and the exhaustion of 2 jobs, I could focus on being exceptional at my one job. I took on extra projects, learned new systems, volunteered for challenges other people avoided. My manager noticed. By month 14, I was promoted to senior technician. The raise was modest but symbolically huge. I was moving forward. During this time, I didn't date. People asked, friends tried to set me up, but I wasn't ready. I needed to fully heal, to fully become myself before I invited someone else into my life. I'd rushed into relationship with Rebecca when I was young and incomplete, and I'd lost myself in the process. I wouldn't make that mistake again. Instead, I invested in friendships. Marcus, who'd let me crash on his couch, became a true brother. We started having weekly dinners, talking about life and goals. He just started a small consulting business and needed tech help, so I began assisting him on weekends, learning about business operations, client relations, the practical side of entrepreneurship. Those weekends taught me more than any class could. Year 2 brought the change that would define everything. Marcus's consulting business was growing, but his technology systems were a mess, cobbled together with free tools and improvised solutions. I started building him a proper infrastructure, custom software that automated his client management, billing, and project tracking. What started as helping a friend became something bigger when his clients noticed the system and asked if I could build something similar for them. Suddenly, I had a side business. 3 clients became 6. 6 became 12. I was building custom software solutions for small businesses, working nights and weekends, loving every minute of it. The work was creative, challenging, and profitable. By month 20, I was making almost as much from my side business as from my day job. By month 22, I made the terrifying decision to quit my job and go full-time with my own company. I called it Cornerstone Solutions because I wanted to build foundations for other people's success the way I was building my own. The first 6 months of entrepreneurship were brutal. I was scared constantly, sure I'd made a huge mistake, but I worked harder than I'd ever worked, even during those 2 job years. Except now I was building something mine, and that made all the difference. I hired my first employee, a young developer named Amy, who was brilliant but overlooked at her previous job. Then a second, a project manager named Richard. We rented a small office, just 3 desks and a coffee maker, but it was ours. By the end of year 2, Cornerstone Solutions was stable and growing. We had 25 active clients, 3 employees, and a reputation for solving problems other tech companies couldn't. I wasn't rich, but I was successful in ways that mattered. I was respected. I was building something real. I was becoming the person I'd always had potential to be, and I'd done it alone, without anyone's help, without anyone to impress or please except myself. That was the victory. Not the money or the title, but the fact that I'd taken devastation and built something beautiful from it. I looked in the mirror and liked the person looking back. That hadn't been true for years. I was healthier, stronger, more confident. I knew what I was capable of. I'd transformed grief into purpose, betrayal into motivation. Rebecca hadn't destroyed me. She'd inadvertently freed me to become someone better. Year 3. Cornerstone Solutions exploded. A major client, a regional hospital system, chose us over 2 much larger firms to overhaul their entire patient management software. The project was huge, the biggest we'd ever attempted. We hired 5 more people, moved to a real office with a conference room and a kitchen. I was suddenly managing 12 employees, negotiating 6-figure contracts, being interviewed for local business magazines about innovative young entrepreneurs disrupting the tech consulting space. It was surreal. 3 years ago, I'd been signing divorce papers in a tiny apartment, feeling like my life was over. Now I was standing in my own office, looking at my name on the door, running a company that mattered. We landed 3 more major contracts in quick succession. By month 35, we had 15 employees, and I had to hire an operations manager because I couldn't handle all the administrative work alone. The company was becoming too successful for me to manage everything personally. I kept the CEO title but started delegating, learning to trust my team, building systems that could run without me micromanaging. It was terrifying and exhilarating. Personally, I'd started dating again. Nothing serious, just reminding myself how to connect with someone, how to be vulnerable without losing myself. I dated a teacher named Sarah for 3 months, a physical therapist named Maria for 2. Both were good people, but I wasn't ready for anything deep. My company was my relationship, my focus, my passion. I'd learned that I didn't need a partner to feel complete. I was whole on my own. If someone amazing came along, wonderful. If not, I was still happy. That mindset was liberating in ways I couldn't have imagined during my marriage. I thought about Rebecca rarely now. When I did, it was with a strange gratitude. Her betrayal, devastating at the time, had forced me to build a life I never would have otherwise. I'd been comfortable in our mediocrity, content to sacrifice myself for her dreams. Without the divorce, I'd probably still be working that call center job, living in that tiny apartment, waiting for a future that would never come. She'd actually done me a favor, though she'd never intended to. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is the best thing that could have happened, just disguised. Tuesday afternoon, week 38. I was in my office reviewing a proposal when my assistant Rachel knocked and entered looking slightly flustered. "Your 3 o'clock interview is here," she said. "Rebecca Martinez for the project coordinator position." Rebecca Martinez, my ex-wife's name. But Martinez was common. I didn't think anything of it. "Send her in," I said, not looking up from my documents. I heard heels on the hardwood floor, heard Rachel close the door behind the candidate, heard silence. Unusual. Candidates usually introduce themselves immediately, nervous and eager. I looked up. Rebecca stood 3 feet from my desk, frozen, her face pale, her eyes wide with shock. She was holding a leather portfolio, wearing a professional dress that looked expensive but not new, her hair shorter than I remembered, makeup careful. She looked older, tired around the eyes, thinner in a way that didn't seem healthy. For 3 seconds, neither of us spoke. My brain processed multiple things simultaneously. This was absolutely my ex-wife. She had no idea I was the CEO of the company she was applying to. She looked nothing like the confident woman who'd handed me divorce papers, and I was completely calm. No racing heart, no anger, just cool, detached observation. "Rebecca," I said evenly, leaning back in my chair. "This is unexpected. Please sit down." She didn't move. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Daniel, this is your company." Her voice was small, shocked. "It is. Cornerstone Solutions. We've been operating for 3 years, though we've grown significantly in the last 18 months. Please, sit. We should talk." She sat slowly, mechanically, like she wasn't sure her legs would hold her. She placed her portfolio on her lap, hands gripping it like a shield. I could see her rings, or rather the absence of them. No wedding band, no engagement ring. "Interesting. I had no idea," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "When they called me for an interview, I didn't recognize the name. I didn't know you." "There's no reason you would have," I said calmly. "We haven't spoken in 3 years. A lot has changed." That was an understatement. Everything had changed. I was a different person sitting in a different life, and she was a stranger who used to know me. Whatever emotions I'd expected to feel in this moment, rage or satisfaction or hurt, I felt none of them. Just curiosity about how this scene would play out. I gestured to her portfolio. "You applied for the project coordinator position. We're interviewing 3 candidates this week. I've read your resume. Impressive credentials. You graduated top of your class, worked at Whitmore Engineering for 2 years, then at DataSync for 8 months. But there's a 6-month gap recently." "May I ask about that?" She swallowed hard, clearly struggling to shift into interview mode. Yes, I was let go from DataSync, budget cuts. I've been freelancing since then, but the market's been difficult." Her voice was steady but barely. I could see her pride fighting her desperation, see her trying to present professionally while internally screaming at the absurdity of this situation. I nodded, making a note. "And you're familiar with project management software? Our stack is primarily Asana, Jira, and custom internal tools." "Yes," she said, finding her footing slightly. "I'm proficient in all major PM platforms. I've managed cross-functional teams of up to 8 people, coordinated product launches, maintained budgets ranging from $50,000 to $300,000. She was good at this, the interview performance, but I could see cracks, the slight tremor in her hands, the way her eyes kept darting to mine, searching for something, anger, or welcome, or explanation. I kept my expression neutral, professional. I was conducting a legitimate interview, not relitigating our past. Not yet. Tell me about a project that failed, I said. How did you handle it? She paused, and something flickered across her face. 2 years ago, I was coordinating a software integration project. We were 3 weeks from launch when we discovered a critical compatibility issue that would have delayed us by months. I'd missed it in the initial planning phase. It was my responsibility, my oversight. She stopped, and I waited. I informed my team and the client immediately. I proposed a workaround that would meet 75% of the original scope while we addressed the compatibility issue. It wasn't perfect, but it kept the project alive. We launched on time with the reduced scope, then rolled out the full functionality 6 weeks later. The client appreciated the honesty. And what did you learn? I asked. She looked directly at me then, and I saw something raw in her eyes. That mistakes are expensive. That cutting corners catches up to you. That sometimes what looks perfect on paper falls apart in reality. We both knew she wasn't just talking about work. The interview continued for 30 minutes. I asked legitimate questions. She gave legitimate answers. We maintained the professional facade, but under it, 1,000 unspoken conversations were happening. When we finished the formal questions, I closed my notepad and leaned forward. That concludes the interview portion, but I think we need to have a different conversation, off the record. She nodded slowly, relief and fear mixing on her face. Rebecca, I'm not going to pretend this isn't strange. 3 years ago, you handed me divorce papers because I wasn't enough for the life you wanted. Now you're sitting in my office applying to work for me. I think we both deserve some honesty. Her composure cracked. Tears appeared in her eyes, though she fought them. I'm sorry, she whispered. For all of it. I was cruel. I was selfish. I thought... She stopped, shaking her head. I thought Tyler was the answer. He had money, connections, the life I'd imagined. But he wasn't you. He was controlling, demeaning. He made me feel small. After a year, I left him, and I realized what I'd thrown away. The tears fell now, and she wiped them angrily. I lost my job because I couldn't focus after that relationship ended. I've been struggling. My car broke down last month, and I couldn't afford to fix it. I'm living with a roommate in an apartment smaller than the one we shared. Everything I thought I wanted turned into ash. And you. She looked around the office at the success I'd built. You became this. You became everything you were supposed to be, and I wasn't there to see it. I gave up the best man I ever knew because I was chasing an illusion. I listened without interrupting, watching her fall apart, feeling her regret like it was a physical presence in the room. Part of me, a small hurt part, felt vindicated. She'd chosen wrong. She'd suffered consequences. The universe had balanced the scales. But the larger part of me, the part that had grown over 3 years, just felt sad. Sad for both of us, for what we'd lost, for the time we'd wasted. I forgive you, I said quietly, and meant it. I forgive you for leaving, for hurting me, for all of it. I was angry for a long time, but I'm not anymore. You made a choice. It hurt, but it also freed me. I built this life because you left. So in a way, I owe you thanks. Her eyes widened. She'd expected anger, maybe cruelty, definitely not forgiveness. You don't hate me? No, I said honestly. I don't hate you, and I don't want you back. We're different people now. That marriage belongs to 2 people who don't exist anymore. She absorbed this, fresh tears falling. So I don't get the job. It wasn't a question. Actually, I said, surprising myself, you're qualified. Your experience is exactly what we need. But I need to know you can work here professionally, without expectations beyond the job. No attempts to rekindle what we had. No drama. If you can do that, the position is yours. We pay $65,000 to start, full benefits, and opportunities for growth. You'd report to Richard, not to me directly. We'd interact occasionally, but not daily. She stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. You'd hire me? After everything? I'm hiring Rebecca Martinez, an experienced project coordinator, not my ex-wife. That person is separate. Can you keep them separate? She nodded, wiping her face, trying to pull herself together. Yes, I can. I will. Daniel, I don't expect anything except a chance to prove I can do the work. Thank you. You're a better person than I deserve. We all deserve second chances, I said. Start Monday. Rachel will send you the onboarding information. I stood, extending my hand professionally. She stood too, shook it, her grip firm despite the tears still on her face. She left, and I sat back down, alone in my office, processing what had just happened. I'd given my ex-wife a job. It was possibly crazy, possibly generous, possibly stupid, but it felt right. I'd built a life based on being the kind of person I respected. That person didn't punish people for old wounds. That person offered second chances because I'd needed one myself. Would it be complicated? Probably. Would people think I was a fool? Maybe. But I'd learned something important over 3 years. The best revenge isn't revenge. It's becoming so genuinely happy and successful that your past wounds become irrelevant. Rebecca hadn't destroyed me. She'd inadvertently created me. And now I was strong enough to offer her a lifeline without fearing she'd pull me down. That was power. That was growth. That was success that mattered more than any title or bank account. I pulled out my phone and texted Marcus, "You won't believe what just happened." His response came immediately. "Tell me everything."